But 2 bits of content we don't have to see, and we know exactly how well they turn out. It's content championship time.
It is the final semi-final.
Semi-final.
Yeah.
The second semi-final.
The second semi-final or the final semi-final.
No, it's just semi-final. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings versus Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This will decide what our final is going to be.
Yes.
And prepare us for episode 100's extravaganza, where we're going to be drinking all episode, and we're going to get to a heated debate after an hour and a half of drinking. What could possibly go wrong? As always, we have 6 categories to help us get through.
Yes,
We've got personal relevance, how well has it aged, rewatchability, story, acting, and cinematography / general visual appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to start us off horizontal?
I can do. So personal relevance. I feel like we've obviously talked about these ones a lot in over this stretch of the bracket. Not much obviously has changed, but for those that haven't seen those, Lord of the Rings, I mean, it is that entry drug into nerdom. It is that and the original Star Wars trilogy are the 2 things that I remembered most as a kid. That like, I love sci-fi, I love fantasy. I will forever follow these things.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings has like hard stuck into my brain from being a kid.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Winter Soldier, it's a great MCU film, but it's like to me, it doesn't come close to what Lord of the Rings is to me.
You're not belittling it because of its genre, are you, Harry?
No, it came out way later, and was at a point where I was like already falling in love with the MCU, and it's like it wasn't like a turning point or anything for me.
Are you telling us you were going to be the next elite sports athlete until you saw Lord of the Rings and you became a nerd instead?
No. There's never. I mean, I'm the right height to be basketball. I just never. We'll not go on that tangent. But yeah, for me, Lord of the Rings is like such a pinnacle point in my childhood.
It's crazy. Like, I've made no secret ever that Winter Soldier is by far my favorite MCU film. And Lord of the Rings is awesome. Like, I'm not a high fantasy fan in general. I appreciate what the genre does, but I like my weapons to be a little bit more shooty and a little bit less stabby. Each to their own. But the cultural impact of Lord of the Rings cannot be overstated. It has survived a test of time in a way that I don't think people fully understand. Like, The Hobbit came out in 36, 35.
Like, there's people to put it this way, there's people to this day, in a day of TikTok is a new thing, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And people on TikTok are still making thirst traps about Aragon.
1937 is when the Hobbit book came out.
There you go.
So this world has survived that long, effortlessly.
Great
and
writing.
Then when it was just starting to potentially not be as big, or when the world was getting more intertwined, we get these films which just literally created out of thin air an entire generation of new high fantasy fans. So, like, while I wouldn't say Lord of the Rings has too much personal relevance for me, I also do have to concede that without it, the genres I love and the stuff I love might not have been given the chance to succeed.
Yeah.
So there's that. But MCU is fucking massive. Like, I believe it is the most successful franchise of all time. Not impossible to believe when they've done like 30 million films, but Still impressive. It's the most successful franchise of all time.
Yeah.
And this is the tippity top of the iceberg for me with that franchise. How well it's aged. I mean, I kind of leaked into this a little bit.
You did.
But Lord of the Rings, come on.
Yeah, still to this day.
It's the epitome of that fine wine, it's an excellent vintage. The double barrel whiskey, the real stinky cheese. Like, it is aged so incredibly well.
Put it this way, there's a place that you can physically visit the Shire today. And these films came out so long ago now.
I mean, we can't visit it today because it's like a 24-hour plane ride away, but yes. Within 48 hours, anyone can be there.
But yeah, like there's a place you can go to, and it's like, that's still successful to this day.
Yeah,
and it's like,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
I think Winter Soldier has also aged phenomenally well.
I would agree. For like those earlier Marvel films where some have kind of shown their cracks and not, and people are like, yeah, they weren't as strong. This one has seen it through and is still one of the earlier ones that is like considered a strong MCU film.
Yeah. Rewatchability. Now, this is where I start to make a really strong argument for Captain America and Winter Soldier.
Well, I mean, on one hand, you have a full day of commitment to watch because it's a extended director's.
Of the Rings.
Yeah, the only one you're going to watch nowadays is the extended director's cut, and then you'll probably dabble in some of the behind the scenes because why the hell not? And then you've set yourself up for the weekend because you're going to want to watch the other two. The other is a MCU film that is at a point where not everything is super interconnected, and you can pretty much hop in and watch, and it's only like, what, 2 hours most?
Yeah, I think at the time it was the longest film, like 2 hours, 12 minutes.
Yeah, so it's like a couple of hours. Cool. Good MCU film.
It's an easy watch that requires no brain power.
Yeah,
and I mean that with all the love in my heart.
Like, don't get me wrong. If you said to me, we've got a free day, what are we watching? I'd be like, Lord of the Rings. But if it's like an evening and we want to throw something on, it's kind of hard to throw Lord of the Rings on.
Lord of the Rings is very much a mood film. You have to prepare to watch it, and it's not because it's difficult to watch or anything, but you want to be locked in to watch it. So you want, like, especially as us, and we're like quite fidgety, tappy guys.
Yeah.
I need to know when I'm going to sit down for that long period of time so I can mentally psych myself out. And you're like, right, I need snacks, I need drinks, I need to pee, I need to get cozy, I need to get comfy, and then and only then am I hitting play. And once play is pressed, short of needing like a pee or death, I'm not moving until the film is over. Winter Soldier, I will throw that bitch on while I'm in the middle of still doing something because it's so easy to keep up with it and like know what's going on. If you need to rewind, you don't feel bad rewinding. If you have to rewind when you're watching Lord of the Rings, you're like, fuck, I wasn't paying enough attention.
I know what you mean.
Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I think that's fair.
I'm not saying that I would prefer to rewatch Winter Soldier. I'm saying it's much more rewatchable.
Yes.
Story.
I mean, there's a reason
the book has been around since 1937.
There's a reason Tolkien's writings are so held in such a high regard.
The Silmarillion, I can't pronounce it.
Silmarillion.
You know that one is a horrible read. That is all I've ever heard. It is so long. There's not as much of a story to it. It's a lore book.
Yeah, it is a lore book.
But people still love it. Do you know how difficult and how awesome your universe has to be for if you were to make the equivalent of that book for DC, Marvel, Star Wars, them fandoms would instantly go, fuck you, I'm not reading that.
Yeah, they'd be like, can I have it in a comic form, please?
Yes. Like, it's mad impressive that people willingly read that book, and you're a fucking sociopath if you had. Like, get a hobby. Because that ain't a hobby anymore if you're reading that book. That's a job.
And, like, to go back to just the film, like, that series of books, originally they wanted it as 2 films at most. And it was like, that's what it was pitched as. And it's like the books and the content was so strong and the story was so strong that Peter Jackson was like, no, this is 3 films. Like, I'm making a film a book because it needs that. And realistically, it like they could have done 4 or 5 films if they really wanted to, like, really get into everything. But it is such a like going back to
essentially is 5 films at the length for them.
Going back to, we said rewatchability, like you put the first one on, you need to watch the other 2. That just shows you how strong the story is because you need to finish the story.
Exactly. No sane person has ever put on just one of the Lord of the Rings films.
No.
Other than maybe someone who's never seen it before and they put the first one on and they don't have access to the other 2.
Yeah.
Like, that would be unhinged. But I will also say Winter Soldier's, like, encapsulated story just in the film is one of the better ones in Marvel.
I would agree.
Up there with Guardians 1 and 2 and 3. And Iron Man 1.
Yeah.
They're probably the best, like, encapsulated in a single film stories, because obviously all the Avengers films can't be counted as encapsulated because you have to do some pre-watching for an Avengers film. Acting. Now, I would say most other things in this entire bracket, Winter Soldier has a really good chance of beating. Other than Harry Potter and this, I think Winter Soldier for me would be right up there for acting, because it has one of the best Marvel casts and they're all like rent is due. But like I said, Harry Potter, just icons up and down, and then Lord of the Rings, icons up and down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's like
you don't get casts like this anymore. It doesn't happen.
No. And the fact that, like, I forget their names, but the actors that play Merry and Pippin, like, them in real life are they are those characters. Like, that's just how they are. Like, and so everyone that acted, like, they fit their parts so strongly that they just brought those characters to life in such an amazing way.
Let me just list off some of these names real quick, yeah? Elijah Wood, Orlando Bloom, Ian McKellen, Sean Bean, Andy Serkis, Kate Blanchett, Hugo Weaving, Christopher Lee, Carl Urban, who's now gone on to be a superstar in The Boys and shit. Like, just absolute superstars. And that's just like the names that instantly like jump off the screen at me. There are other really talented actors throughout this. Martin Freeman is in the later films, for fuck's sake. Like, this entire franchise is so unbelievably stacked. Like, you've just never seen anything like it. I mean, you have. I'd say overall the Harry Potter cast is more impressive. But my God, they did such a good job. And don't get me wrong, we've always said, like, the quality of the story and the universe you're in does limit the acting potential somewhat.
Yeah.
It would still take a Lord of the Rings level story for the actors in Winter Soldier to have a chance at getting at this level. Because the quality of the actors is so similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, Lord of the Rings just it lives and dies by the quality of the acting, and it lives. So what does that tell you? Yeah. Cinematography. I do not believe we currently live in a world anymore where we are going to have anyone who can have the impact that George Lucas did on filmmaking. I think technology is moving too fast now for one person to ever have an impact as large as George Lucas did. But if there was someone who got close to that, it was Peter Jackson.
And here's something I was going to mention with this. It's like, Star Wars gave us ILM. Lord of the Rings gave us Weta. Like, those two, like, effects studios are like the peak of practical CGI. Like Weta's gone on to make some incredible VFX tools, like to solve problems that they've had. But like those two places, their ability to do practical and the props and all the set design and like to bring all these things to life are what sold those films, like visually.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just like, and the amount of like on location that they did, like New Zealand is stunning. And that dedication to doing it that way just
absolutely
that it paid off massively.
And it's always going to have my favorite ever like on set like story. Like Peter, where's the light coming from in this scene? He's like the same place as the music. It's like I get some people would be annoyed by something like that, but I would take that over scenes where I can't see dick all that we currently have to deal with.
Oh yeah.
MCU's never been known for its visual appeal.
No, it has
other than
found
maybe
its
just
look.
the very pretty cast they always have.
It found its visual style in the first 3-4 films, and then it kind of that set the precedent going forward.
What I will say is, and I've said it every other time, other than maybe Shang-Chi, it has some of the best choreographed fight scenes in the entire MCU.
Yeah.
Which I always find very, very impressive, and is part of why I love the show so much. They look so fluid; it's unreal.
Yeah, they were very well put together in Winter Soldier.
Right, should we score it up then?
Yes, I think we shall.
Personal relevance, I think it's going to be a tie.
Yeah, because it's Lord of the Rings for me, without a shout.
Yeah. And while I respect Lord of the Rings, I would be lying to say Lord of the Rings had more of an impact on me than Winter Soldier did.
Well, yeah, it's personal.
Exactly. How well it's aged is obviously Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Rewatchability, Winter Soldier.
As much as it hurts, yes, I would say Winter Soldier is easier to rewatch.
And that makes it 1-1. Ooh, a bit scary. Unfortunately, the next three are things where Lord of the Rings is probably going to absolutely curb stomp Winter Soldier. Story, I don't think is close.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings, no shot.
Acting, I am going to give to Lord of the Rings, obviously, but I don't want that to be seen as a slight on how well the actors did in Winter Soldier.
Well, yeah, like
it's a
Winter Soldier
it's like coming second out of 100.
Yeah.
And then cinematography is Lord of the Rings. It's beautiful. And that makes Lord of the Rings our winner of our second semi-final in a 4-1 fashion.